2, 3, 4.
Yo, what's up, jazz guitar friends? Larry Tamanini here. Hey, just heard me taking a chorus over Lazy Bird. You know, one of my favorite John Coltrane tunes. Philadelphia, not born, but lived in Philadelphia. Close enough, right? For a long time. Philly style. And that's what I'm here to talk about. What is Philly jazz guitar? You know, sometimes you might be online and you see Philly jazz guitar style or in the style of Philly jazz guitar. And what is it? What does Philly jazz guitar mean, right? Is it, hey, yo, I'm playing over here? Does it have something to do with cheesesteak grease or throwing snowballs at Santa Claus? Absolutely not. But it is an attitude thing. Hey, I'm playing over here. You know, when I think about great Philadelphia jazz guitar players like Eddie Lang, Pat Martino, Jimmy Bruno, Kurt Rosenwinkel, so many great players, so many other great players, but there's one common thread between those great players, and that is a super strong eighth note. You know, Pat Martino is so much more than a 12-point star and spelling out words with scales, right? We're all familiar with that alphabet thing, and some of Pat's aesthetic ideas are brilliant. And as somebody that studied with Dennis Andoli, I know that the way jazz guitar is taught, there's two styles. There's the style that Eddie Lang and Dennis and Joe Skro, that's a great name, right? Formulated, which is like the 4-string families and stuff like that. And then there's like the whole thing up in Boston, and you know, every region that's produced a lot of great players has its own style and own kind of hallmarks. And when I think about Philly jazz, I think about those super strong eighth notes. You know, I just was playing Lazy Bird, right? And when you think about the history of jazz and all the great recordings of jazz, when you look at a lot of them, there's always somebody from Philly or Pittsburgh or Detroit. Those three cities, very, very similar in that they produce so many great players. There's also a culture behind that too, and that's a whole other thing that we could talk about. But again, those three cities, Philly, Detroit, Pittsburgh, right? All feeders into Chicago and New York, all the big world cities, right? But they got all their players and the sound from Philly because the rhythm sections are so strong. And if you wanted to play a lot in Philadelphia, you had to have a strong enough eighth note to stand up to these rhythm sections, or stand with these rhythm sections rather, and swing with them. So let's just say you love Pat Martino. You're trying to play his lines. You're in the Star. You're trying to play all that stuff. Or let's just say you listen to Jimmy or Kurt a lot, and like you really want to you can get the notes, but there's something missing. Chances are it's that swing intensity in your eighth notes. Now check it out. If I was to take a simple idea to apply this to, and just like a lick, right? That's sort of like dominant 7 lick 101, right? Just going down F from to D, and then, right? What happens when you're trying to swing and maybe you're like take a lick and you learn a lick and you're like, oh, all right, like I'm gonna try to swing with this, and you start playing it a bunch of times, right? I was trying to go as fast as I could, right? What ends up happening is you really don't do anything different. You just play it faster. And if you're playing right on the beat, you know, chances are it's going to be hard for other rhythm section, even in a duo setting, to really get underneath you. So you want to loosen up that eighth note. You know, when people talk about like Pat Martino or even some of Jimmy's stuff, and they want to talk about like playing really, really on top, it's not always necessarily on top. And when you listen to especially Pat and even Train, you hear them lay back, especially on ballads. But it's almost like they're so far on top, they're behind. I guess like that's part of it too, right? You can be so early you're late, and you can be so late you're early. That's a whole other thing. All right, so the first thing that you can do is try to be a little bit more deliberate with some of the way you're accenting. You know, I like a little bounce on that first note. I kind of did a couple different ones there. But I don't necessarily want to pick everything because that's going to lock me in, right? When I think about other great players from like maybe the West Coast or like kind of sort of coming out of that Berkeley, they like will play legato a lot of stuff, you know. That's really tough to get a super swinging legato line, a minor third down. I don't know. It always kind of sounds like a Price is Right kind of a, sound effect. So anyway, I might want to pick a lot of those notes. I can get away with that. All right, so once I start getting my accents together and I'm not just playing real, you see notes on the paper and you play the notes. You have to make the notes work for you a little bit. You can't this isn't Legend of Zelda where you just play the magical flute and then it just appears. You get whisked away to the swing dimension. Hey, you got to make the notes work a little bit. And what are some things I can do? Well, number one, the toughest thing to do if you're really having a hard time swinging and you're starting all your ideas on one, that's going to be the first thing you can do to really increase your swing idea, right? Or any music for that matter, right? So check it out. If I wanted to not start on one, well, I mean, I could feel that first note that I played as an end. I can't do it on both of the Fs though. That would be bad, right? That would be the worst thing that you could do. When you play a lick, I think the rest of the band is, if they're listening, they know the lick, they pretty much know where you're going to go. And if you really veer off the path, you're going to get some looks, right? I think the worst thing that can happen to any guitar player, any improviser for that matter, is like you're done playing a solo and like no one's ready to go after you. No one knows where you are. You're completely off the band GPS. But when you're really paying attention to your eighth notes, you're not going to be as apt to want to go jazz off-roading. Another thing that you can do, okay, so you heard me just sort of like play on hold that F. The next logical thing, right? What did I end up doing? I put some pickup notes. Here's basically the opposite kind of idea. Either are Charlie Parker Omnibook approved. And what did I end up doing? You're adding some swing factor to the lick. You play the line. You can't just expect that to work every time. You gotta have a little setup. So again, in true Philly jazz guitar fashion, you have to get in there, make it happen for you, have a plan, right? Have a well-defined plan. I started my idea on the end of 4, and what I shot for was the first time, and that was on the end of 4. I just walked up from E flat to E. And the second time, oops. Pretty cool line, right? And you hear both those lines and it almost sounds like, well, I mean, the line itself sounds different, but again, it's always good to have a couple good approaches to your lines, right? You want to have, think about the lick is, or any line for that matter, the lick itself is the middle of the story. You're going to have to resolve it, which is the end, but then you're going to have to write the intro too. And if you can do a couple little things again, and when you're resolving a lick, that usually is like 1 or 2 notes. Same said for starting it. So again, a great way to be really deliberate about what you're playing, deliberate with your swing. And again, when you're deliberate with your 8th note, you're really getting that kind of Philly sound, that 8th note sound, that aggressive 8th note sound. Yo, I'm playing over here. So all right, jazz guitar friends, thanks for hanging out. I hope everybody is doing well, right? Keep playing, keep swinging. That's all we can do. Bebop.